They told me to look into a medical credit card. My son had just closed an $18 million fund, and he told his father, who had a tumour sitting on his kidney, to look into a medical credit card. Then he asked if that was everything, because he had a car waiting. I didn't say anything back. I was 61 years old, standing in the parking garage of a hospital. I mopped floors in 6 nights a week, and I just held the phone against my ear and listened to him hang up. Before I tell you the rest, I want you to understand what this actually is. It isn't a story about money. Money's just the thing that makes people show you their real face. This is a story about who walks toward you when you've got nothing left in your hands. Let me back up. I live in a 2-bedroom on Bloomfield Street in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Bought it in 1991 for $41,000 and figured it'd be a starter house. 35 years is a long start. The carport sags on the north side. There's a stain on the living room ceiling shaped like Oklahoma that I've painted over 4 separate times, and it comes back every spring like it's got something to prove. It was a Thursday night in the middle of June. Hot. The kind of River Valley hot where the air feels like a wet towel somebody left in a truck. I was at the kitchen table with the mail I'd been ignoring for a week. A shut-off warning from American. A letter from the insurance company that I hadn't opened because envelopes that thick never say anything good. Diane's phone went off on the counter. I watched her face change. That's the part I want you to picture, because I'd been watching it happen for years and I still wasn't used to it. Her whole expression rearranged itself, softened, lit up from somewhere behind her eyes. Grant, sweetheart. There it was. The only smile in that house, and it never once had my name on it. Oh, honey, tell me everything. I set my coffee down. That Grant? Let me say hey. She turned her back. Not a small turn either. She rotated her body away from me like I was a window she needed to close and walked into the living room with the phone pressed to her ear. 18 million. Grant, 18. My God, I'm so proud of you. You got that head for numbers straight off my daddy's side. You know that. Daddy could have sold sand in the desert. I sat there and listened to my wife of 33 years talk to our son like he'd pulled a child out of a burning building instead of closing a real estate fund. I'm not telling you that to be small about it. I'm telling you because you need to know what normal sounded like in my kitchen before you can understand what came after. She hung up, walked back in, and I watched the smile come off her face the instant her eyes found me. Not fade, come off, like she'd unhooked it. He's doing so well, Walter. Good, I said, and I meant it. Whatever that boy and I had turned into, I never wanted anything bad for him. Not one day of my life. Diane didn't answer that. She just picked the American notice up off the stack and set it down in front of me, square, like she was dealing a card. She didn't ask about the blood I'd been seeing for 2 months. She didn't know about it, because I hadn't told her, because the last time I brought a problem to that woman, she looked at me the way you look at a clogged drain. Handle this, she said, before they shut it off again. Again. Like it was a season. Like I was a season. Welcome to the Bitterroot. Pull up a chair. This one goes somewhere, and I want you with me the whole way. Hit that like button and tell me down in the comments where you are listening from, because I read them, and it means more than you know. Now here's the part where I'm supposed to make myself the good guy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you the truth, and the truth doesn't need me to dress it up. 11 years ago, I wasn't a janitor. I owned Ridley Marine Fabrication, a little shop on the river doing repair work for the towboat outfits. 14 employees. My name on the building. I rebuilt tow knees, deck fittings, bar drake sections. Not glamorous work. Good work. In 2014, I bought a load of certified plate steel from a supplier out of Illinois. Eric Halverson. Nice enough on the phone. Papers looked right. Mill certs, heat numbers, all of it. I checked what a man in my position checks. The certs were forged. The steel was scrap-grade garbage stamped with numbers that belonged to a mill in Indiana that had never seen it. A tow knee I rebuilt with that plate, let go in the Mississippi Channel, below Thebes. No one died. I still say a rosary about that, and I'm not even Catholic. But a loaded hopper barge broke away and put a hole in a dock, and the insurance carriers came at me like weather. I sued Halverson. I won. $4.2 million judgment, entered in 2015. And it was worth exactly as much as the paper it was printed on, because by then Halverson had vanished into some cloud of shell companies, and my lawyer said collecting on it would cost me more than I'd ever see. The shot was gone by then. The insurance settled around me and left me holding what they wouldn't cover. My credit went into the river with everything else. Diane didn't ask me one time if I was all right. She asked me what my plan was. That's a different question than people think it is. So I got a job, housekeeping tech for a contract vendor at Southeast Missouri Regional. 6 nights a week. Buffer, mop, biohazard, elevator banks, cath lab hallway at 2 a.m. when it's so quiet you can hear the ice machine on the floor above you. And somewhere in all that, my son turned 23 and decided his entire life had been ruined because his old man couldn't cover his last 2 semesters at Mizzou, and he had to finish at a state school with loans. He has never forgiven me. Not once. Not after I explained it. Not after I showed him the court file. In Grant's version, his father was a small-time nobody who bet the family on a bad load of steel and lost. He needed somebody to be the reason. I was standing right there, and I was convenient. My daughter is different. Nora's 29. She's a hospice aide, works for an outfit that sends her into people's houses out in the county to sit with them at the end, bathes them, turns them, holds their hand at 3 a.m. when their own kids can't stand to be in the room. $17 and change an hour for that. She was 18 when the shot went under, old enough to remember the good house and young enough to watch me build a small life out of nothing instead of just grieving the big one. She came by that Saturday with a foil pan of chicken and dumplings, the way my mother used to make it, too much black pepper, exactly right. She didn't say a word about Grant or money or $18 million. She set the pan on the stove, kissed the top of my head and said, "You look grey, old man. It's the light in here." Uh-huh. She never believed me, not one time in her whole life. "You're seeing somebody. I'm making the appointment Monday, and you're not going to argue with me about it." I didn't argue. There's no percentage in arguing with Nora. She got that from somewhere, and I've got a strong suspicion where. Dr. Sood didn't sit down when she came back in. That's how I knew. "Mr. Ridley, I'm not going to talk around this." She put the folder on the counter like it was heavier than paper. "There's a mass on your right kidney, 4.1 centimetres. The good news is that it's contained and it's operable. The other news is that 4 centimetres is where it stops being something we watch." "Okay," I said, "because what else comes out of your mouth? So we take it out. So we take it out. Soon, weeks." Then a woman from financial services came in. Perfectly kind lady, name of Roberta, looked like she'd rather have been anywhere on earth. She explained that my plan through the vendor had a $9,100 deductible and that the surgical group required a scheduling deposit against it before they'd hold an OR block, $3,500. "I can start a payment plan application," she said, "but the deposit comes first. That's their policy, not ours." $3,500. You want to hear something funny? I have a badge for that building. There's a photo of me on a lanyard in my truck that lets me into every room on that surgical floor at midnight with a mop bucket. I have cleaned the exact room they wanted to cut me open in. I've wiped that light fixture down. I sat in my truck in the employee garage, a 2007 F150, with a rear window I fixed with resin. And I did the arithmetic maybe 9 different ways. Every time it came out the same. There wasn't $3,500 anywhere in my life. My credit was still a smoking hole. No bank in Cape County was going to look at me twice. $3,500, I thought. And my boy just closed $18 million. I told myself I wasn't going to call him. I held that line for 3 days. Then I called him. Because that's what a father does. You put your pride in your back pocket and you dial your son and you hope. God, you hope. You hope he's still in there somewhere under all of it. He picked up on the 5th ring. I could hear it right away. Glassware. A woman laughing at something. Somebody saying the word reservation too loud. "Dad, hey, is this quick?" "We're at Van der Set. We're celebrating the close." "Grant, I need to tell you something serious." "Hang on." Muffled. "Then, go." So I told him. The mass. The 4 centimetres. The surgery. The deductible. The $3,500 I needed by Friday, or they wouldn't put me on the board. There was a pause. A real one. Long enough that for about 1 second, 1 stupid second, I felt something lift in my chest. Then he said, "So what? This is a solicitation call." "Grant, no, I'm asking. Because I spent 11 years climbing out of a hole you dug for this family, and I finally get one good night, and you call me in the middle of it with your hand out. This isn't the shop. This is cancer. This is my kidney. It's always something, Dad. That's the whole pattern. There's always some emergency, and there's always somebody else who's supposed to pay for it. His voice dropped and got very level, which is worse than yelling. Look into a medical credit card, care credits, whatever. That's what they're for. I've got people watching me right now, and I'm not going to be the guy taking a call about his father's deductible in the middle of dinner. I can't keep carrying you. And the line went dead. My son hung up on me while I was standing in a parking garage under a hospital with a tumour in my back, so he could get back to his wine. I called Diane, told her all of it, asked if she'd talk to him. "Don't you dare," she said. "Don't you dare put this on him tonight. He got out, Walter. He got away from all of this, and you are not going to reach up and pull him back into it. Ask Nina. She's got a steady job." Nora. Our daughter's name is Nora. 33 years, and she still can't get it right when she's angry enough. I hung up and sat in that truck for about an hour and a half, didn't cry. I was way past crying. Just sat there thinking about how a man can spend his whole life pouring himself out for 4 people and end up alone in a parking garage doing math that never works. I met Nora at a place on Broadway 2 days later. Vinyl Booths, waitress who calls everybody baby. I wasn't going to tell her. I had actually decided that. I was going to eat my catfish and let her think I was fine. She knew before I got my hat off. "Dad," she put her fork down. "What?" "Nothing, I'm just tired." "Dad." So I told her, and I want you to understand what I felt sitting there. Shame. Pure shame. 61 years old and about to ask a 29-year-old hospice aide with an apartment full of second-hand furniture for money that her brother had refused without taking his hand off his wine glass. I didn't even finish the sentence. Nora reached into her bag and put an envelope on the table. Then she slid a piece of yellow paper across next to it. Face up, and I looked down at it, and my whole body went cold. A pawn ticket. "Nora, there's 3,900 in there," she said. "Don't count it in here." "What is this ticket?" "Dad, stop." "What is this ticket, Nora?" Her eyes were wet, but her voice was completely flat. The way it gets when she's the steadiest person in a room full of scared people, which is her whole job. I cashed out my 403B. After the penalty, it came to 2,900 and change. She was quiet a second. And I took Grandma's ring to the place on Kings Highway. 600. It's a 6-month ticket. I'm getting it back. That ring was my mother's. My mother put it in Nora's hand in a hospital bed in 2011 and told her she was the only one in this family who ever listened. I couldn't get any air. "Baby, no, we're going down there today, and we're getting that back." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Hard. The way you grab hold of something you have decided you are not letting go of. "It's a ring, Dad," she said. "It sits in a drawer. You don't." And I sat in that booth and I cried in front of a waitress named Deb and about 11 strangers eating lunch on a Tuesday. And my daughter, the one nobody ever bragged about on the telephone, held my hand across a Formica table and told me I was going to be fine. She was the only one who ever saw me. That's what I thought. The only one who ever looked at me and saw a person instead of a bill. I had no idea, sitting in that booth, what was already in the mail. I had no idea that a piece of paper from 2015, a judgment so worthless my own lawyer told me to frame it as a joke, was about to come back around and land in my daughter's mailbox. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Stay with me, because you need to know what it cost to get there. They took me back at 5:40 in the morning on a Thursday in July. The last thing I remember is Nora's face right up close to mine, in scrubs because she was going straight to a client from there. Both her hands around my fingers. "You're stubborn as a fence post," she said. "I already told them. They said that's good. Stubborn people wake up mad, and mad people heal fast." Where did she learn to be like this, I thought. 29 years old and she's the calmest one in the building, Auntie Doi. Then the lights went out. I came up around 4 that afternoon with my mouth full of cotton and a pain in my side like somebody had parked a bush hog on me. Dr. Sud came by that evening still in her cap. "Clean," she said. "Margins are clean. We took the lower third and left you the rest. You're going to be all right, Mr. Ridley." I didn't cry. Didn't have it in me. I just laid there in the dark listening to the pump beep and thought about a little gold ring sitting in a glass case on Kings Highway under a fluorescent light with a paper tag on it. I'm going to make this right, I told myself. I don't care what I have to do or how old I am when I do it. That ring comes home. I had no idea how fast that was going to come due. I spent 17 days on Nora's pull-out couch because my own house had gone quiet in a way I couldn't stand. Diane never asked how the surgery went. Not a call, not a text. Not one word about whether they got it. Nora's apartment is one bedroom in a complex off Mount Auburn. Thin walls, upstairs neighbour with a television that seemed to only get one channel and only play it at 11 at night. She had her shift schedule taped to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a cardinal. Nights mostly, some doubles. She'd picked up 2 extra clients out toward Jackson after the surgery, and I knew exactly why, and she knew that I knew, and neither one of us said it out loud. I looked at that schedule every single morning. Everyone. She's out there sitting with a dying man in a farmhouse at 4 a.m. for $17 an hour. I thought, and my son is in St. Louis explaining to somebody at a bar what a preferred return is. That thought sat on me heavier than the staples in my side. She'd come home in the afternoon still smelling like other people's houses, and she'd check my incision with hands that had done it 1,000 times on strangers, and she'd heat up soup, and she'd fall asleep sitting up in a kitchen chair with her shoes still on. Never once complained. Never once mentioned the ring. Never once asked me when or whether or how I was going to pay any of it back. That's the whole difference right there. Grant gives so somebody will see him give. Nora doesn't experience it as giving. To her, it's just what your hands do when somebody you love is in trouble. It was a Tuesday, 16 days after surgery, when the carrier knocked instead of using the box. Nora was out on a call. I answered in a robe, moving like an old man, which I was. "Certified," he said. "Need a signature." 2 of them, actually. One envelope from a law firm in Chicago I didn't recognize. One from the United States District Court for the Southern District of Illinois. Here we go, I thought. Another 11-year-old ghost. Another notice about a case that died before it ever lived. I almost set them on the counter and went back to the couch. I want you to know that. I almost didn't open my own mail. But I sat down at Nora's little kitchen table and tore the court one first. I read it twice, then a third time, slow, out loud because I did not trust my own eyes. Eric Halvorsen had not vanished. He'd gotten bigger. He'd spent a decade selling forged mill certifications into the pipeline business and the crane business and eventually into a federal contract. In 2024, the government took him apart. Wire fraud, 41 counts. Assets frozen across 3 states and a bank in Nevis. A court-appointed receiver had been assembling the estate for 2 years, and the receiver was now distributing that estate to holders of valid, unsatisfied civil judgments. I had one of those. I had a $4.2 million judgment from 2015 that nobody in the world had ever thought was worth a nickel, accruing statutory interest every single day for 11 years while I emptied trash cans on the 4th floor. I opened the second envelope. The firm was the Receivers Council. It was a distribution notice, and it had a number on it, and the number was $9,640,000. Net. To me. Payable on election. 30 days. I want to tell you I hollered. I want to tell you I got up and danced around that little apartment like a fool. I didn't move. I sat there so still I could hear the refrigerator running. $9,640,000, I thought. And 3 weeks ago I was crying in a diner over $3,500. Then I looked up, and my eyes went right to that schedule on the fridge with the cardinal magnet. She's out there right now, I thought. Somebody's house in the county, holding somebody's hand. And I'm sitting in her kitchen, holding 9.6. That's when something in me went very quiet, and very cold, and very clear. I didn't call Diane. I didn't call Grant. I want you to remember that, because it matters for what's coming. I never hid a thing from anybody. I just could not locate one single reason to pick up the phone and inform 2 people who had already told me, in their own words, out of their own mouths, that my problems were not their problems. Why would I call them, I thought. 3 weeks ago they told me exactly whose problem I was. I called Ray Tolliver instead. Ray handled my business work back before the shot went down. One of about 2 professionals who stayed in my life after it did, mostly because I kept paying him what little I could, on time, every single month, for 6 years. Walt Ridley, Nora said you came through it clean. Ray, I need you to look at some paper today. Today, if you can do it. Something in my voice must have told him. Talk to me. I told him all of it. The receiver, the judgment, the number. There was a pause so long I checked my screen. 964, he said finally. Walt, that's not a windfall. That's a different life. I know what it is. I look back at that schedule. That's why I need you to pull something else first before we touch this. Name it. 5 years ago, Diane had you draw up an agreement. Grant pushed it. Marital property, splitting me off from the shop's liabilities. Ray went quiet again, and it was a different kind of quiet. The post-nuptial, he said. I remember it. I told her at the time I didn't love the drafting. She wanted it that way. Grant wanted it that way. I want you to pull the original, and I want you to read me the operative language. Word for word, don't smooth it out for me. Don't smooth. Because if I remembered that document right, and I was starting to think I did, Diane hadn't just walled herself off from my debts. She'd signed away everything on the other side of that wall, forever, whatever it turned out to be. Ray called me back 90 minutes later. I could hear him turning pages. All right. Recital 4, then paragraph 9. Are you sitting? I'm sitting. Wife hereby waives, disclaims, releases, and forever renounces any, and all right, title, claim, or interest, legal or equitable, present or contingent, in and to Ridley Marine Fabrication LLC, and each asset identified on Schedule A hereto, including without limitation, all claims, causes of action, and choses in action, belonging thereto, together with any judgment, settlement, recovery or distribution, arising from or relating to the same, whether now existing or hereafter arising, and whether known or unknown to the parties, as of the date hereof. He stopped. Read me the last part again. The last. Whether now existing or hereafter arising, and whether known or unknown to the parties as of the date hereof. I put my hand flat on Nora's kitchen table. Ray, is Schedule A attached? Schedule A is attached. Another pause. Walt, Schedule A is in handwriting. Whose? Well, it's initialed GR. I heard him breathe out. Line 14. Ridley Marine Fabrication LLC. All claims and choses in action, including Halverson judgment. Value 0. Uncollectible. I sat there in that apartment with the afternoon coming through those cheap blinds, and I did not feel one drop of what you probably think I felt. Say that number again. He wrote it himself, Walt. Grant valued the Halverson judgment at 0 on his mother's own schedule of assets, and then he signed the agreement as a witness. It's notarized. It's been sitting in my file for 5 years. My son, the finance man, the one with the head for numbers straight off his granddad's side, he'd sat at my kitchen table 5 years ago, and personally, in his own handwriting, marked the single most valuable thing my family would ever own as garbage, and made his mother release it forever, and then witnessed her signature. He was protecting her from my debts, I said. He was protecting her from everything, Ray said, including the good part. That's what hereafter arising means. That's what unknown means. Under Missouri law, that's a valid marital agreement, and she was represented by her own counsel when she signed it. There's no fraud, no duress, no non-disclosure, because there was nothing to disclose. Nobody on earth knew that judgment was worth a dime in 2021, including you. Especially me. Especially you. I looked at the cardinal magnet one more time. Ray, I want to elect the distribution, and I don't want one living soul outside this phone call knowing about it until it's finished. Not Diane. Not Grant. Understood. I want a trust, irrevocable. Nora's the beneficiary. All of it. Every dime after the taxes, and after what's left of my old debt gets cleared. Ray didn't say anything for a second. All of it, Walt. All of it. Walt, you've got a kidney and a half and a hospital job. She cashed out her retirement, Ray. At 29. She took the penalty. She pawned my mother's ring for $600 so they put me on the surgical board. My throat closed up and I had to stop and get it back. Meanwhile, my son told me to look into a medical credit card and my wife told me not to spoil his dinner. So no, I'm not splitting this 3 ways so that a stranger would look at it and call it fair. Fair already happened. Fair happened in a booth on Broadway in June, and only one of my kids showed up for it. I'll have paper for you Friday. One more thing. Whatever house I buy her, my name doesn't go on it. Trust owns it outright. I don't want one single edge for anybody to get a fingernail under. Airtight, Ray said. Airtight. I hung up and sat there a long while, listening to that window unit rattle and somebody's television bleeding down through the ceiling. They'll find out, I thought, and when they do, they won't come here asking how I'm healing. They'll come here asking about the money. I wasn't wrong, but I want you to hold on to something because I was wrong about the reason. I thought Grant would come because he heard about the judgment. He hadn't heard about the judgment. When he came through that door 11 days later, he didn't know a single thing about Halverson or receivers or $9.6 million. He came because he was drowning. His fund had a bridge note on it and a personal guarantee behind that, and the anchor investor had walked, and he needed $400,000 in 11 days. And he had gotten desperate enough to do the one thing he swore he'd never do again: walk into a room where his father was. He had no idea what was on the table in that room. Neither did Diane. I did. I'd had 11 days to sit with it. If you've made it this far with me, do me a favour and drop a comment. Tell me what you'd have done. And hit that subscribe button while you're down there, because the next part is why I told you any of this. My son came into my daughter's apartment, planning to threaten me with a divorce lawyer and a freeze order. He had no idea I was holding a document, in his own handwriting, that had locked him out 5 years before he ever walked through that door. 11 days. That's what I had between hanging up with Ray and hearing that first hit on Nora's door. I didn't spend them writing a speech. I want to be honest about that. I mostly walked. A little farther every morning, out past the mailboxes and back, then around the block, then down to the corner and back. Sat on that little concrete balcony in the evenings and watched the sun go down behind a Dollar General and thought about 11 years of my life that had finally stopped billing me. Then Wednesday night somebody hit that door like they meant to come through it. Dad, open the door. I know you're in there. Nora got there first, still in her scrubs, and pulled it open with a look on her face. I'd seen her give a nephew who was about to get himself thrown out of a funeral. You want to explain why you're beating on my door like a repo man? Grant came past her without answering. Diane right behind him. I want you to see this. My son. 34 years old. Dress shirt with the collar dark. Tie yanked down. Hair wrong. And something in his eyes I had genuinely never seen there before. Not once in his whole life. Not smug. Not bored. Scared. My wife behind him with her arms folded and her jaw set. Neither one of them looked at my side. Neither one of them asked what the margins came back as. Not one word about the surgery. 16 days. Dad. His voice cracked in the middle. Just slightly. We need to talk right now. There it is, I thought. Not how are you? Not, I'm sorry I hung up on you in a parking garage. Straight to the ask. Sit down, Grant. You look worse than I do, and I've got staples in me. He didn't sit. He walked. Mum and I have been talking, and I need you to be an adult about this. He was working himself up to something. There's family money that got tied up in your mess, and there's equity in the house, and I need you to sign off on a line of credit against Bloomfield Street. Short term, 90 days. It's a paperwork problem, not a money problem. How much? 400. I looked at him for a second. $400,000. It's a bridge, Dad, it's temporary. 3 weeks ago I asked you for 3,500, so a surgeon would take a tumour out of my back, I said. You told me to look into a medical credit card. Diane's chin came up. That is not the same thing. No, I said. It surely isn't. And that's when Grant's phone lit up on the table, and he glanced at it, and I watched his whole face fall in on itself, and he said very quietly, Who's Sutter and Voss? The room went still. Grant, Diane said. There's a lien search alert on my dad's name. He was scrolling now, fast, and his hand had started shaking. Federal receivership, Southern District of Illinois. Distribution to judgment creditors. Ridley, Walter J. He looked up, his mouth was open. $9.6 million. Diane made a sound I'd never heard out of her. Walter, is that true? So that's how, I thought. Not from me, from a lien alert his own compliance software sent him. That's almost funny. It's true, I said. Elected 11 days ago, funded Monday. 11 days? Grant's voice went up into a register I hadn't heard since he was a kid. You've been sitting on $9 million for 11 days and you didn't call me? Your own son? While I'm out here drowning. The last time I called you, I said, I was standing in a parking garage. So, no, I didn't feel any particular pull to call you when something good happened either. And that should have been the moment. That right there, that was his whole window. He put his finger in my face instead. You hid it. You knew. You knew about that receivership. You sat in that little house and let Mom drive a 2011 Camry and let me kill myself for 11 years trying to fix what you broke. And the whole time you were waiting to hand it to your favourite. He believes it, I thought. He's rewriting 11 years in real time in front of me, and he believes every single word coming out of him. Grant. My voice came out quieter than his, which somehow made the room quieter too. I found out about that money 16 days after surgery, sitting on that couch behind you. A mailman handed it to me while I was in a bathrobe. I didn't hide a fortune from this family. I hid the fact that I was scared for 11 straight years, because every time I opened my mouth about it, your mother slid a bill across the table and you told me I ruined your 20s. Diane stepped up then. Don't you dare play the martyr, Walter Ridley. I stood next to you for 33 years while you dragged this family through the mud. That money is family money. You're being spiteful. You're being small. You're being disgusting, Grant said. And then his voice dropped low and flat, the voice of a man who thinks he's about to win. Here's what happens. Mom files Friday. Financial abandonment. Dissipation of marital assets. The whole thing. My attorney's already drafting a motion to freeze every account that touched that distribution. You concealed a marital asset, Dad. That is not a grey area. That's fraud. He brought his hand down flat on Nora's kitchen table. Hard. The same table where my daughter had slid a pawn ticket across to me in a booth 2 months ago, or near enough. We will bury you in court so long you won't have bus fare when it's over. That's my daughter's table, I thought, and he just put his fist on it like he owns the room. I looked at Grant a long moment, then at Diane. Then I got up, slow, careful of my side, and reached into the jacket hanging on the chair. You want to talk about attorneys? I said. Let's talk about attorneys. I put the first document down in front of Diane. You remember this? She looked at it, and I watched the colour leave her face before she got to the bottom of the first page. 5 years ago, the two of you sat me down at my own table, I said. You were scared. I believed that was real. You thought the carriers were going to come back around and take the house out from under you because of the shop. I tapped it. Grant's idea. His brilliant idea. He told you it was smart. He told you it'd protect your credit. So you had your own lawyer draft it, and you took the house and your accounts as your sole and separate property, and you made me take the LLC and every scrap of liability attached to it as mine. Diane's hands had started to go. Read paragraph 9, Diane. And there was not one drop of enjoyment in me, I want you to know that. It doesn't say debts, it says claims and choses in action. It says any judgment, settlement, recovery, or distribution arising therefrom. It says whether now existing or hereafter arising. It says whether known or unknown. I let that sit. You didn't just wall yourself off from my failure, you released every future claim to anything that shop ever produced. Forever. For any reason. Your attorney explained it to you. I watched him do it. You signed it anyway because you wanted to be clean of me. Grant's face had gone the colour of drywall. But he wasn't finished. He never is. That doesn't touch me, he snapped. I'll sue in my own name. On what? I said, and slid the second page across to him. Look at that before you finish. He looked down. It was Schedule A, his handwriting, his initials. Line 14, I said. Read it to your mother. He didn't, so I did. Ridley Marine Fabrication, LLC, all claims and choses in action, including Halverson judgment. Value 0, uncollectible. The upstairs neighbour's television murmured through the ceiling. You wrote that? I said. You wrote the number 0 next to $9.6 million in your own hand, and you made your mother sign it away, and then you signed underneath as a witness. Not me. Not some lawyer. You, the man with the head for numbers. Nobody said anything. Then I reached in my pocket one more time and put a little yellow slip of paper on the table between them. Grant looked at it. What is that? That's a pawn ticket, I said. King's Highway, $600 against your grandmother's wedding ring. Your sister took it in on a Monday morning before a 12-hour shift, so a surgeon would put my name on the board because her brother told her father to look into a medical credit card. Diane made that sound again. While you were ordering a bottle of something to celebrate $18 million, I said, your sister was cashing out her retirement account at 29 years old and eating the penalty on it. She's got 2 extra clients out in the county right now that she picked up after my surgery, and she thinks I don't know why. I put my hands flat on the table. So go ahead, bring your attorney. Bring every attorney in this district. But before you do, you're going to have to stand up in front of a judge in Jackson, Missouri, and explain how you intend to claim a share of an asset your mother released in writing, on your own advice, using a schedule you wrote yourself. And then you're going to explain to that same judge where you were the night your father needed $3,500 and where your sister was. Grant's jaw was working. Nothing was coming out. I didn't hide this from you, I said, and my voice finally came all the way down. Tired. Done. I found out on that couch, 16 days out of surgery, it took 11 days to elect and fund. The trust closed Monday. And I want you both to hear this part because it's the only part that matters. Even if I'd known 5 years ago, even if I'd had a decade of warning, it would not change one thing about tonight. I looked at Diane, then at Grant. You two divorced yourselves from this family a long, long time ago. You just hadn't done the paperwork. Diane's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. 33 years, and I had never once seen that woman without a word ready. The trust is irrevocable, I said. Every dollar goes to Nora. The first thing Ray did Monday morning was drive to Kings Highway and get that ring out of the case before some stranger bought it. Then he paid off her nursing loans, all 61,000 of them. Then he bought this building so nobody in it owes rent to anybody but her while her house gets finished out on County Road 620. And I funded the thing she's been talking about for 4 years, the respite program for families out in the county who can't pay for anybody to sit with their people at night. I folded my hands. You're both free of my mistakes. Isn't that the whole thing you wanted? 11 years I heard about how I ruined this family. Well, congratulations. The ruin's over, and the two of you signed yourselves out of everything that came after it, in ink, with a notary watching. Grant just stood there staring at that yellow pawn ticket, like if he looked hard enough, it would turn into a different piece of paper. Get out of my daughter's house, I said. Quiet. Both of you. And they went. In a silence I had never once gotten out of either of them. No slammed door, no parting shot. Just two people walking out into a parking lot, working out in real time that the cleverness Grant had been so proud of his whole life, the smart move he talked his own mother into at my kitchen table, was the exact thing that had locked them both out of a fortune they will never see 1 cent of. Nora stood in the doorway a long time after they were gone, arms wrapped around herself. Dad, she said, barely out loud. You didn't have to give me all of it. Yeah, I said. I did. I got up and walked over and put my arm around her, careful of my side, and I put my mother's ring in her hand. She didn't say anything. She just closed her fingers on it and put her forehead against my shoulder, and we stood there in a little 1-bedroom apartment with a cardinal magnet on the fridge and a television bleeding through the ceiling. It's a ring, Dad. It sits in a drawer. You don't. She was right about that. Turned out I couldn't be replaced either. Not to her. And somewhere up in St. Louis that same night, my son sat down to figure out how he was going to explain to his partners that the 18 million he'd bragged about on the phone belonged to other people, and that the 400,000 he needed by Friday was going to come out of the only house anybody in our family still owned outright. The one his mother protected, the one she'd already put up to co-sign for him, back when he was the golden one, and there wasn't a single soul left in his corner willing to pick up the phone. Funny how that lands. If this one hit you, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments where you're listening from. I'll see you on the next one.